For the past 10 years, Hawke's Bay finishing farmer Mike Petersen has been the chairman of Beef and Lamb New Zealand. In July 2013, Mike was appointed as the New Zealand Special Agricultural Trade Envoy, a new position established by the Ministries of Trade and Primary Industries.
We've got a finishing operation here in Hawke's Bay, very summer dry, and we are finishing about 500 bulls a year and about 5,000 lambs, assuming weather and conditions allow. We spend a lot of time adapting to the climate, so we know that we get very dry from December through to April, and so we try not to farm in that period unless we've got crops. So, we've got bulls, quite defined windows where we have bulls on, and then also lambs in the summer on crops and lambs on new grass in the winter. The bulls are mainly on here from April through to December, and that's the period of time that we've got the most certainty about when we grow grass. We're increasingly moving to plantain. We've been with chicory a bit as well, although it's a bit more difficult around weed control, and we're seeing that that's a really good option for particularly animal performance. I love the farming. There's nothing better than when you've been in Wellington for 3 days to come home onto the farm and get out on the quad and shift a bit of stock. So no, it's still very much something that we love doing. The family enjoy it, and we just think it's just a great way of life. Mum and Dad still live on the farm, so we try and get the stock work done, and we weigh ahead of time when we can to make sure we've got stock ready to go when there's two of us here. But when I'm not here, if the stock needs shifting or other jobs need doing, particularly when the water runs dry or something for some reason, then Dad's here to come and lend a hand, which is great. Range from 622 to 694, and they put on 1.65 kilos per day.
Since when?
That's over the last 6 weeks.
Over the last 6 weeks, so they're putting on a lot more than that now. Yeah.
You need to be at the top of your game, and we keep talking about this, the good people, the good farmers with good productivity, good cost management, because that's increasingly one of the biggest issues, can still make good money farming sheep and beef. And I'd argue we'd have returns that would certainly be comparable on a return on capital basis to dairy. I'm incredibly privileged, really, to be involved outside the farm gate. It's great for the mind, getting off farm, looking at different things that are happening around the world, not just through Beef and Lamb New Zealand, but my involvement in Whangaraa Farms and the Maori agribusiness sector, and with other farms as well, So it's tremendously challenging, stimulating, and you meet a huge amount of great people. In July last year, I was appointed to the role of New Zealand Special Agricultural Trade Envoy. It's a joint appointment by the Minister for Primary Industries and the Minister of Trade. And this role is unique in the world from the point of view that no other country has effectively an agricultural trade ambassador. And it's an important role because there's an incredible amount of work that needs to be done in ag diplomacy, agricultural cooperation, particularly around the trade agreements that we're looking to progress that are so valuable for New Zealand farmers. Making sure that farming groups offshore understand the New Zealand system, understand where we've come from, and understand how we've reformed over many, many years. When I travel around the world, which I'm lucky enough to do, I've yet to see another farmer who wouldn't rather be farming in New Zealand in the sheep and beef sector. We are held in incredible regard offshore, not just for our production, but for our processing and exporting sector. We don't appreciate it. We don't see it when we sit here in New Zealand. By and large, you've really got a different model to the dairy industry, which, the dairy industry is very much aggregated around, particularly the size of Fonterra, which is about 90% of the industry. And the meat industry, we do have about 4 big companies that dominate the bulk of production, but each of them have their own particular differentiated range of products. I've always argued that, if you're going to be exporting commodities that compete on price, you should do it with scale, and Fonterra does that very well, particularly with milk powder. But when you have differentiated products, then having a range of players is not a disadvantage. The reality of bringing the meat industry into a dominant player with about 80% or more of production and export out of New Zealand is going to be very difficult to achieve. And that's because we have an industry now that's deregulated, and we have different ownership structures. We have a range of different owners in the industry, from cooperative owned to privately owned to multinational owned. And so bringing all those views together is going to be nearly impossible. When we see what's happening with the dairy sector, which has been performing particularly well for farmers, Our guys in our sector need confidence that the future is going to be a viable one, particularly for the next generation coming on. So that's been an incredibly challenging area to progress. But the red meat sector strategy was very, very clear in pointing out that about half of the gains that the sector could achieve between now and 25 were on farm and in areas where farmers have direct control. So you can do a lot by actually working within your own business to protect yourself and get yourself set up for the future. My view is that land use is always going to change, and it should do, according to its highest and best use over time. For Beef and Lamb New Zealand, of course, our role is really to make sure that the farmers that are sheep and beef farming have all the tools and technologies and knowledge available to be successful. The reality is, if you look at where we're going at the moment, on flat quality land, particularly down in the South Island, we just can't keep pace with dairy. And so we are increasingly moving to research programs and extension activities that focus on hill country. And we're getting good performance now off hill country that we could normally only have expected to get off the flats. I actually have never been more optimistic about the future of our primary production industry than I am today. Over the 10 years that I got involved in Beef and Lamb New Zealand, we've seen just demand for protein literally take off and soar. It's not just China. We're seeing countries right through Asia, even the South Americas and Europe, looking to secure more food for the future. It's just an incredibly exciting time to be a farmer. The challenge now is to get those returns back to farmers so they can reinvest in the future.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.